In the heart of the Great Depression, many stories of crime became legends. Infamy was at its peak, and bank robbery was like a trend amongst desperate souls trying to survive through the harsh times. Among those souls was a man who not only became one of America's most wanted men, but also a folk hero. As we dive into this true tale, many questions will arise, like, why was he loved by so many? Was he a hero, or just a ruthless criminal hiding under a pretty face? Did he deserve to be one of the biggest names? This is the story that still echoes through many streets of America. The story full of conspiracies. The story of Charles Arthur Floyd, or as you may know him, Pretty Boy Floyd. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows over a small, hard-scrabble farm in Adairsville, Georgia. The earth is dry and cracked, the result of the scorching sun and the unbearable pain of those who work it. In the fields, a young boy of about 6 years old, barefoot and dressed in patched clothes, struggles to keep up with the adults. His name is Charles Arthur Floyd, and this is the life he has known. One of poverty, labor, and endless struggle. Around the age of 7, the Floyd family migrated to Sallisaw, Oklahoma, in the hope of a better life. The future, led by rumors of arable lands and new opportunities, enticed many families to migrate westward during this period, but this was far from the truth. The Floyds' situation in Oklahoma was not much different from what they left, being serfs on land owned by others and struggling to make ends meet. Now, Sallisaw is somewhat of a rundown town, and crime is high, along with unemployment and super low upward mobility.
Thus, by the time he was already in his late teens, Charles Floyd had already started to strive for something more than the life of poverty that he could only expect. He quit school after 8th grade, which was normal for boys in rural areas where children were required at home to work on the farm. But Floyd was restless. He had no desire to get into the rat race and live a conformist life where all he got was back-breaking work for mere pennies, where all his sweat and efforts were worth nothing but a piece of bread. That too, if he was lucky enough.
As the stories from the Depression era suggest, there was not much to do about poverty. People needed money to survive, but had no jobs to do so, and that led them to desperate paths which did not end up great in most of the cases.
In his early 20s, Floyd started to dabble in criminal activities. He initially became a petty thief and illegally manufactured and sold alcohol, which thrived during the Prohibition period. The Prohibition business was lethal.
It entailed a risk of conflict with law enforcement and other gangs competing for the spoils.
However, Floyd's initial full immersion in the criminal world was when, at the age of 21 in 1925, he was arrested for a payroll robbery in St. Louis, Missouri. Floyd, along with a couple of companions, stole a Kroger grocery store payroll worth $11,000, which might not sound too much to some, but back in 1925, it was quite a large sum of money. The crime was a step up from his past actions, and it had the consequence of receiving a 5-year term at Missouri State Penitentiary. It was a brutal environment where physical force was always present, and where prisoners needed to find a niche to make it through their sentence. To give you an idea of the painful situation the prisoners were put in there, they would attach a ball and chain to the convicts' ankles. The only bright prospect for someone like Charles Arthur Pretty Boy Floyd was the educational opportunities it presented. For him, it was an opportunity to learn about the higher levels of crime, how you would case a bank, how you would crack a safe, how you would get away from the scene of a crime. Young Floyd's background was set, and when he got to prison, he did not take long to learn from other inmates with experience in serious crime. It can be reasonably assumed that in the savage and brutal world of the penitentiary, one becomes as ruthless as the rest. Thus, Floyd adapted the demeanor and behavioral patterns of the inmates he met. When he was let out in 1929, he was not a young boy who had gone to prison 4 years earlier, but a criminal who despised any form of authority and would not go back to the prison like that he had endured in childhood. Everyone in the Jefferson City prison that he respected, all of the high-level criminals told him that Kansas City was a place that he had to go. Kansas City had a nice gentleman's agreement. There was a deal between the Kansas City mob and the Kansas City political infrastructure that the mob would keep major crime down to be allowed to conduct their pettier crime, things like gambling and prostitution and bootlegging and booze manufacturing and things like that. It was a nice back-scratching operation. So upon his release from prison, Floyd relocated to Oklahoma, only to discover that the society he once knew had evolved significantly. This country was in the middle of the Great Depression, and the Midwestern states were among the most severely affected. Homes and farms were being repossessed on an unprecedented scale, and literally thousands of families were left straight and empty-handed. He lost whatever dreams he once cherished and felt betrayed by the American society that has been portrayed as belonging to all with equal rights and opportunities, but was, in fact, a mirage of dreams for most.
It was during this time that Floyd started executing his bank robberies, which would later gain him much fame across the country. While most of his peers worked in urban centers, Floyd focused more on the rural areas, where the security at the banks was relatively poor and local law enforcement was unable to combat an organized criminal group.
Floyd's criminal activities would soon lead him to be dubbed Pretty Boy, which was allegedly given to him by a woman who saw him rob and reportedly said that he was a handsome young man. As for Floyd, he despised that name as it ruined his attempts to maintain a seemingly criminal facade. Yet the name Pretty Boy Floyd spread like wildfire through the Midwest region. But things wouldn't go according to his name. More than 200 agents hunting him made things ugly instead.
As his fame rose, so did the myth about him that circulated among the people. It was said that during the robberies, Floyd decided to burn mortgages, thus freeing many farmers from their debts.
While to many Floyd was a criminal, to others he was a hero of the Dust Bowl that robbed the rich banks and the government that had left them penniless during the Depression. During an incident at the Salisaw Bank, Floyd arrived in the town at about 10 o'clock. Bird, his partner, George Birdwell, was also with him in the car. They stopped right in front of the bank entrance. They came out of their car and then he proceeded to greet his friends and neighbors. He especially invited his grandfather, Charles Murphy Floyd. He directed his grandfather to where it was most appropriate to sit. And someone asked him, "Why are you here today, Charlie?" Everybody in the town seems to know Pretty Boy. He goes next door to the barber shop, and he says hello to the barber and one of the customers there.
And he says, "Now, don't lift that receiver and make any calls here because I'm gonna go into this bank. So to sum it up, we are going to steal from this bank." He went in and told the bank teller, "Give it all to me and we'll be out of your hair." It was kind of like a successful actor returning to his hometown after having made it big on Broadway. He got great delight out of just being able to go into his hometown and rob that bank and get away scot-free. This incident was the perfect demonstration of the fame and love he got from the people.
He was cruel in his robberies and was not afraid to kill people to get what he wanted. In 1931, while holding up a garage in Ohio, Floyd and his gang shot a police officer dead, and this added more heat to the pursuit of him. The FBI, under Hoover, decided that they wanted to capture Floyd, and he was painted as public enemy number one. The event that would forever change Floyd's life and cement his place in the annals of American crime history occurred on June 17, 1933, in Kansas City, Missouri. On that day, a group of law enforcement officers were transporting a captured bank robber, Frank Nash, who had been apprehended in Arkansas and was being brought back to Kansas City for questioning. The plan was to transfer Nash from a train to a car at Union Station, but as the officers and their prisoners moved across the station platform, they were ambushed by a group of gunmen. The gunmen opened fire with Thompson submachine guns, spraying the platform with bullets. In the chaos that followed, 4 law enforcement officers and Frank Nash were killed. The attack, which became known as the Kansas City Massacre, shocked the nation and led to widespread calls for a crackdown on organized crime. The FBI quickly named Pretty Boy Floyd as one of the gunmen responsible for the massacre, although the evidence linking him to the crime was largely circumstantial. Some witnesses claimed to have seen Floyd at the scene, while others provided alibis suggesting he was elsewhere. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Floyd's reputation as a violent criminal made him an easy target for blame, and the FBI launched an intensive manhunt to capture or kill him. This was because for over a year, Floyd fled from the law and mainly relied on his associates to ensure he did not get arrested. It was an exhausting life of constantly being on the move, the risk of being killed at any time, and the risk of people he thought were helpful turning on him. In one scene, Floyd gets the idea that the FBI is almost at his door, yet he is very committed not to being arrested, so he escapes the hotel room from the back window before the feds even get close to the floor he was staying on. At this time, Floyd's legend was slowly building as he engaged in different fights. He could be seen more often in the press as newspapers provided updates on his activities and his possible locations. To many, Floyd was not just a criminal. He represented a rebellion against a society that despises one for being black. They even wrote songs for him, and his icon was idealized in everything that was created for the masses. However, the life that Floyd was living was not as lavish as it seemed. The man was running around constantly, couldn't stay in one place for long, sometimes didn't even get a chance to catch a breath, and was always checking behind him. As it was mentioned that the FBI was hot on his trail, he developed health problems, and the constant pressure and strain of living a life in hiding affected his mental and physical state. Nevertheless, Floyd successfully avoided arrest for more than a year. As the authorities upped the ante in the search for the infamous criminal, the opportunities for escaping justice were reduced. And by the end of 1934, there was the realization of his imminent capture. As stated before, Floyd's luck ran out after he was arrested on October 22, 1934. A local sheriff there in East Liverpool, Ohio, saw him and knew him to be the subject of the wanted poster, and promptly contacted the FBI. Soon, a team of federal agents called by the famous FBI agent Melvin Purvis swooped down to arrest him. The confrontation occurred in a cornfield located in Clarkson, Ohio. When arrested, the agents surrounded Floyd, and despite his efforts to escape, he was cornered by the agents. As for what happened next, unsubstantiated reports claim that Floyd dropped the weapon and attempted to flee, and that as a result of this, he was shot dead by the agents. Floyd was shot several times and subsequently ended up on the ground dead. As he lay dying, he reportedly muttered a final defiance, "I'm done for. You've got me." After that, he took his last breath, and America's most infamous criminal was no more.
Floyd's remains were returned to Oklahoma for burial, and his funeral service was conducted in Sallisaw, his hometown. Nevertheless, thousands of people came to the funeral, proving that people can have mixed emotions towards a criminal, especially if he is widely known. A gangster, Pretty Boy Floyd, became a legend of American history after his death in recent years. He has been portrayed in numerous books, movies, and songs, and hence his life is shrouded in myths. However, the tale that lies beneath the myth is of a man who was created by the facts of his era, a man who willingly embarked upon a life of crime for no greater reason than that he could not find any other way of sustaining his existence and resenting it. Floyd's story is an example of the flip side of the American dream, a dream that never came through for many. Therefore, this story is a clear demonstration of the dangers of a society that fails to provide support to the ones in desperate need, and the measures that individuals will go to once they consider themselves helpless, because at the end of the day, when a man is going to sleep without eating a grain, his survival instincts will kick in, pushing him towards the unfortunate paths which might allow them to live a better life, or lead them to complete demise with no chance of redemption. This is it for the video. We hope you enjoyed. Every second of it was worth your time. Please make sure to show your love by hitting the like button, share it with your friends who might find it interesting, and just so you don't miss out on other amazing videos like this one, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.